Okay, here we go. Good morning. Hi, welcome to another episode of Mug to Mug with Erin. I'm Erin. This is my mug. Here's another mug. And I have a guest mug today. I have Joan and her mug. She has a mug too. So, yay. And Joan and I got the memo to wear blue. So if you're wearing blue today, put in the comments that you're wearing blue because I know that's my favorite color. But today we get to talk to Joan as I'm working through this series, talking to people about times when in their life when they have felt God's presence. Uh, I just am enjoying hearing story after story of when God does just meet us in our moments and just shows us that He is our everyday Emmanuel. And we talk a lot about Emmanuel at Christmas, but my goal is to remind us that He's with us every moment of every day. And so, Joan, I'm looking forward to hearing your story about a situation or more that where God showed you that you felt His presence.
Mhm. Well, there are quite a number of situations like that in my life. When you get to my age, of course, you can look back on many years where God has met you. Many of those situations happened when I was in prayer, and I really consider prayer a lifeline to God. He has met me so many times when I have been beyond myself, when I have been either so sad or so anxious or so despairing, and God has met me. One of those times happened when I was living in Guatemala. I was a single missionary there. And when I first got there, I was assigned to live with a Dutch woman who was also with our same organization. So she and I were roommates, and we had a great time together as roommates. But then she met a wonderful Guatemalan man. And so they got married, and of course, that meant that she moved out. I could no longer afford the house where the two of us lived. And so my boss found a smaller place a few doors down from where they lived. And the landlady owned both his house and the one that I would move into. So she was willing to give us a break on what it would cost. And so I moved in there, determined that I was not going to let loneliness and depression get a hold of me. I filled my schedule to the max. I figured if I was going to be single and not have a roommate, then I needed to be investing my time as much as possible in the lives of others. So that was my strategy, and it worked for the most part. But one day I was at work, and it had been a hard day. I don't remember what all happened, but I do remember that my boss's family had come in to visit, and I was already feeling so alone at that point and feeling like when I saw them, is there ever going to be a family for me? Here I am, 25. I enjoyed my work in Mexico, I mean, in Guatemala, no question about that. But I wanted to be married. All of my life growing up, people had said to me, "Oh, you're going to be such a good mom someday." Or, "Oh, you're going to make such a good wife. You're going to make some guy really happy." But here I was, single, alone. Well, when the day got to the end and I was able to go home, I remember driving through the narrow Guatemalan streets with tears just streaming down my cheeks, asking God, why? Why? Why am I alone and single when by this time most of my siblings had gotten married and I was not the youngest? And so I got to the apartment, the house where I lived, and pulled in and went running basically through the house to my bedroom and flung myself onto my bed and just sobbed. and said, God, I don't understand it because you made me this way. You made me to want children. You made me to want to be married. Um, and why am I this way and I'm still single? And after a while of crying, I got down, and you can see I still feel it sometimes. I got down on the side of my bed and prayed, on my knees on the side of my bed, just calling out to God and asking Him to meet me. And then as my sobs slowed, I his voice, his still small voice that those of us who have experienced it love, came through crystal clear. And it was, I got you through today, didn't I?
Mm.
And with that, I realized that I had brought onto myself all the weight of possible years ahead of me when I would still be single. I should have brought a tissue with me. And I, I was, the weight on me that day was that this feeling that I have, it's going to stay with me for the rest of my life. And I may never get married. And I'm always, I may always be single, and I'm always going to feel alone, and I'm always going to be desolate. And so, on the heels of that still small voice, I got you through today, didn't I? Was the verse that I had memorized many years previously. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. And I knew then that I had made a big mistake in thinking that God's grace was not going to be enough, that His grace had gotten me through the day that day, and His grace would be enough for all of the years ahead. So that memory actually sustained me through many years of singleness. I did not get married until I was 43, but I often looked back to that day whenever I was down, whenever I was alone, whenever I was feeling the press of being single, to say, yep, one day at a time. God's grace is sufficient for one day.
Wow.
So,
That's
sorry, here I go. Weeping.
No, I love tears. Um, it usually means in cases like this that God is near, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like He was near to you that day.
It was.
And your story is, I mean, it's so real. It's, and your next statement wasn't, and then the next day I met the man of my dreams.
Not at all.
He doesn't always work that way, and he doesn't always, like, he didn't make the promise that he would bring a husband to you.
Right.
He just said, I'm enough for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's, oh, that there's that gap when, like you said, God, you were like, God, you made me to want these things. You made me to want a husband. And um, I just, it's so powerful. It's so good to be reminded that His grace is sufficient, and His plans for us are made with our best, and all His love for us and the good that He has planned for us in mind. Um, I love that. Uh, I love that you shared that, and I love that it still hits your heart. That um, because every day we need to be reminded that He's right there with us.
Yeah. And I my husband, I come from a line of people who live a long time. My husband does not. And so we expect that he will pass before I will. So that memory will sustain me as well through my widowhood.
Right.
And so it will still matter then.
So, can I ask, how did you meet your husband?
That's an interesting story. We met online back in the
What?
days when online dating was not being done much.
I was
because
not expecting that at all.
so that's a story, another story in itself that I could tell. But I was teaching at Prairie Bible College in Canada, and I had been asked to teach a new class. So I was online looking for, doing research for my new class when I stumbled across this Christian singles site. And so I said, my students are going to come to me and say, Miss Lovestrand, you should try online. And then I can say to them, been there, done that, didn't work, don't like it. That was my goal. And I met my husband.
That is crazy. Was he in your area
No,
or
he
was
lived in,
he
so it took us,
in where?
he lived in Arizona and I was in Alberta, Canada.
Okay.
So it took us over a year to finally meet face to face. But by then we had been daily emailing. And by then we knew so much about each other that I said to my mom, the only question is, will we enjoy each other's personality?
Hmm.
As that, of course, limited phone calls because international phone calls were very expensive back then. And daily emails don't give you a complete picture of the person's personality. So, and we decided we enjoyed each other. So we got married 6 months later.
I love that. What a fun story.
The scariest thing in the world was to admit to my students that I had met him online because I didn't want to encourage them to do that. When you're 18, 19, 20, there's a whole lot of single men out there. But when you're 42, which is what I was when I met him, there aren't. And like I said, I did it on a lark, just so I could tell them that don't like it.
Oh, I love it. And the whole time God was going, I've got you. I'll have the lab.
And he has been such a good husband. I said to him just recently, I said, thank you for being so patient with me. And he said, yeah, that's why God had me wait so long to get married. I need to learn patience first.
That is funny.
But anyway, yeah,
Oh,
it's been good.
well, that's fun. Thank you for that additional story. I love that. I love it. Well, Joan, as we think through that situation and think through just that truth that you like heard the Lord, you felt him. If there's like a listener today that's feeling alone, uh, and you filled up your schedule and still felt alone. So if you have, I mean, I know there's someone listening today that feels alone. What words of encouragement would you give to him or her today?
For me, I would say there is nothing better than time in prayer and the word. So that day, I was desperate. And so prayer became my anchor. But there have been many times when God's word has been what I needed to get me through the day. And so I would encourage you just to do that. The other thing is to find a Christian brother or sister, someone that you can reach out to at those times and say, I need someone right now um, that will stand by me and pray with me and support me in my own means.
I love that. Thank you. So, where can people find you online? I know you're online.
I am. I am. So I wrote a book recently, and here it is, Letters to Cassie, backwards, but okay. Um,
It flipped
and
it. It flipped it on my side.
yeah, I should have flipped it on my side, but anyway, letters to Cassie. And so I am online under Joan Lovestrand Farley. So Lovestrand is my maiden name. And because I was 43 when I got married, that's the way my writing life is. joanlovestrandfarley.org. And then you can also find me on Instagram, same handle, Joan Lovestrand Farley, and on Facebook, Joan Lovestrand Farley. So,
I love it. Well, good.
information.
Well, tell us a little bit about Letters to Cassie.
Okay. Letters to Cassie is the story of a girl whose mother has passed away from cancer, and she's heading into her senior year with lots of questions about life. And so she is desolate, of course. Her mother was her number one cheerleader and her number one advisor. And so she's really missing her mom and having a hard time. And then her dad tells her that her mom has left behind 9 letters for her to read. And each one contains a challenge for her to do something. Things that her mom wanted to be able to do with her, but she's gone. And so she has left behind these 9 letters with these 9 challenges of things for her to do. And she says, if you complete all 9, your dad has a surprise for you. So that's what the book is about. And it's basically intended, I have been told by people grieving that it has helped them with their grief. I've also been told by parents who have their daughters reading it that it has helped them with their Christian growth. I when I was writing it, I had in mind the title God's Girl, but my early readers told me that that sounded like a devotional book and it would throw people off. So I renamed it to Letters to Cassie, but one mom said to me, my daughter walked away from that book saying, I want to be God's girl. So it is intended to help people, to help girls and women too with their spiritual growth.
That's amazing. And I mean, just having one person say, I want to be God's girl after reading that, that's like, okay, all the work has been worth it.
Yes, yes. And that's what I've been praying, that the Lord would use it in young women's lives. And I've had parents and grandparents say, the Lord helped me with that book as well. So it's not just for young women.
That's so exciting. I mean, God is so good to give us these ideas and to let us do something we love, right? I mean, um, he gives us the gifts and we enjoy using them, and then he does amazing things through them. It's just an
Yes,
amazing cycle.
it has been. It was a long road. I started it 8 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
And another story to the background, if you want another story.
Of course, I love your stories.
When I was in 9th grade, I was in a boarding school in Venezuela. My parents were missionaries on the island of Trinidad, which is off the coast of Venezuela. And Trinidad is under the British school system, so that I couldn't fit in at 9th grade to their system. So I went to boarding school in Venezuela. And one day when I was an avid reader, even back then. And one day I was in the library and I pulled this book down off the shelf. And it was a book it was a story. And it had a lot of, this girl went to her mom all the time with questions. And so her mom was basically walking her through all kinds of different scenarios. One of the things that she taught her was a new method of Bible study. Well, at the time, I was reading my Bible, but I wasn't doing a good job of paying attention to what I was reading. And I saw that method of Bible study and said, I'm going to do that because I really need to learn about God. And so I started doing this method of Bible study and it changed my life. It became, I realized the value of not just reading, but studying the Bible. So anyway, fast forward many, many years, my husband was pastoring the church in Maine, and I walked into our church library and pulled a book down off the shelf in the young adult section, and it was the exact same book.
Oh my
How
goodness.
it was still there after all those years. Well, it was a different library, but it's an old book. And so I took it down, took it home to make sure it was the same book, and it was, and I don't remember the name and or the author, unfortunately. Took it home, reread it, passed it off to our one of our youth leaders, and she read it and she handed it back and she said, "I can't recommend this. It's too out of date."
Mm,
And she said there's just too many things that she mentions that just don't fit with culture anymore. And so I put it back on the shelf. And when I put it back, I thought maybe someday God will allow me to write a book that will help girls as much as that book helped me.
mm.
And so 8 years ago, I remembered that. And Charlie was away on a trip. And so I said, let me just take some time while he's gone and let me see if I can write something. And so I sat down in the morning, 6 hours later, I got up from writing and said, that's the most fun I've had in a while. And I realized I needed to write the book. So at first, it was just a fun hobby. But after a while, the Lord basically said to me, you need to finish that book. So it's finally done. And it's a relief to have it finally done.
Well, now you can put it in the hands of other people. You're
Right.
like, it's not up
Right.
here anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I love that story. And it just
Oh,
shows how even reading fiction, can story is so powerful. And
yeah.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's through story where it gets, things get into our heart that would not through a lecture or through
Mhm.
just information.
And I took that same method of Bible study that I learned when I was a teen and put it in this book.
Oh, wow.
So actually, I had a girl at our church come to me after my church did a book launch for me. So after the book launch, she came to me the following Sunday and said, I've started that method of Bible study and I love it.
Oh, no, that's amazing.
Oh, yeah, it is. So,
Awesome.
and it's well known, it's not, when as a teenager, I had never heard of it before, but as an adult, I've heard of several people mention it through the years. And so I know it's not, some particular person's method. It's a well known.
Right. That's amazing. That's great. Oh, Joan, thank you for being with us today. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. It's been my pleasure, and I'm so glad that we met. When was that? Last month?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was
Yeah,
it a
and,
restaurant?
and I got to know you. And someday we'll run into each other again at some writers event, probably, hopefully.
Yes, and we'll have more stories to share. Oh, well, thank you, Joan. I appreciate it. And thank you for being here with Mug to Mug with Erin. And I'll see you next time. Until then, uh, just keep on going. Yay, mugs. Oh, okay. Let's see if I can find
Off button.
yeah. So it says, oh, stop recording. There we go. Yes.